So what if the multiverse is real? And what if there was a potential for those of us in our universe, us humans, Homo sapiens, had a potential to influence the multiverse, our universe, and maybe even all of them all together? Let's talk about that in this video. Now, if this sounds crazy, if this is your first video, hello, welcome, hi, it's nice to have you. Yeah, we talk about all things, everything over here. And I'm going to give you guys a reason why I think this matters, okay? I'm going to have the fundamental belief that if life's a game, let's play to win. Right? And so my whole thing is you have to study your opponent. We're the winning team and they're the losing team. We're studying the losing team because we're studying them to see exactly how they're operating. Hence why I'm obsessed with looking into the science of it all. We've currently been reading this book, Beyond the Veil, exploring the bubble theory in the fourth dimension, which we've got a whole series going through this. If you're interested in that, please check that out. And also we've studied everything. We talked about the entertainment industry. We talked about the media, sports, politics, education. We've done religion. I've read the Quran on this channel. I've read Dianetics, the book from Scientology on this channel, the Bible on this channel. We've done so much on this channel. And we've done so much, and we looked in so many different areas. We looked in the scientific areas, we looked in the technological areas. We looked at so many levels of layers. And all because I'm obsessed, genuinely obsessed with trying to study the opponent to understand exactly what is happening. We know that by scientific fact, and this is again where my foundations for my motivations all align, right? We know that the universe, the law of entropy states that our universe, our entire universe, is always moving more to a place of disorder than towards order. We're always moving towards disorder by naturally, right? The only way we can counteract that is a force has to come up against that. So even if you're not aware of entropy, entropy is still part of your life regardless. I'll give you guys simple examples. The moment you're born, you're only getting constantly closer to dying, right? If you go and paint a wall in your house right now, that paint doesn't last longer and get better and better, more well painted. It starts to chip, it starts to whatever, right? Then you're like, I need a new coat of paint. You know what I'm saying? We as a society, everything is always moving towards disorder, right? And so to me, that in and of itself is in fact the losing team. You being subject to entropy is you being subject to losing by default. You see what I'm saying? Which again aligns with my spiritual beliefs. The Bible says we were born sinners, we're born in sin, right? Because we, in our own thinking, in our own logic, in our own understanding, because we think we know better than we do, and we also have free will, which is something we've talked about at length on this channel. We make decisions that help to propel the entropy in our lives, right? Hence why I say we're a society that looks at ourselves as these like, oh, we're so ahead now. We have all this technology, but the destruction is even increasing. The degeneracy is increasing. The disease is increasing. I don't know if I said dysfunction already, but yeah, dysfunction. It's all increasing, even though we're supposedly more knowledgeable, and everything is happening based on our free will. Now, I've said to you guys before that how the world is and the state of everything is always a product of our collective free will as individuals in the world, right? And that's why I say a lot of times that if we all used our free will in certain ways, if, for example, if all of us in the entire country, in this country, I'm living in England, right? People are upset about lots of different things with the government. If all of us decided that it's unreasonable to have a 5-day work week and we only want a 4-day work week and everybody stayed at home, I guarantee the powers that be would have to make that happen overnight. You know why? Because now no one's going to work. And realistically speaking, they need us just as much as we need them. Free will. But if we use our free will to continue and act as slaves to the system, I'm not saying that working as a slave, because I believe God created us to work, as well. And I believe that our work is supposed to be a part of us thriving, you know what I mean? Not just surviving. That would change, right? So our free will and our choices, even just in this level, we can acknowledge, hopefully you guys can see that I'm saying that even just on a normal basis, we can, and what we do and what we say and how we choose to use our time and energy. I've said this to you guys all the time. I believe the power is of the people and the power is always with the people. Hence why when people are in power, there's all these campaigns. Why? Because they need you to vote for them. Same with the entertainment industry. You look at people like, how did this person get rich? How do whatever? Well, because people are showing up. The other day I was looking at people talking about how people in the UK don't want to pay a couple £100 to go and see Beyonce, but she's selling tickets for people are buying tickets for like $2,400. People are like, why wouldn't the tickets over there are way cheaper, right? And the funny thing is, and this is the funny thing again, is because of the difference between America and England. Obviously, I've lived in both. I was born in the United States. Is that again? It was a perfect display of everything I'm talking about. In America, people would spend that money. People would do that kind of thing because Americans don't realize how, just similar to how people are in Britain, like there's a big gap between the basic level of living of Americans and people in England. So people are like, well, if you translate that couple £300 into dollars, that's only like $500, whatever, 550, whatever dollars. I'm like, no, it's not, darling. The Great British Pound Sterling is significantly heavy. And in this country, because this country is a type of country where people are less standing up for their rights, they less are, vocal. They're much more just do whatever the government tells you and shut up, right, over here. So I've said this before, the actual average standard of living of the average person in the United Kingdom is very low in comparison, right? In comparison in general. And that doesn't mean I think that Americans have a high standard of living. I think it's low regardless. I think the bar is in the bin for both countries. Just to be clear. What I'm saying is that the reason why America is the way that it is and people are not understanding disconnect is because in America, people are more, they don't let people get away with as much as people over here do. And again, what I'm saying about the power being with the people, I discovered courtesy of YouTube, which again, predominantly my audience is mostly from the United States, my biggest audience. I don't know how you guys even understand what I'm saying. But people in the United States, right, don't recognize that because what you've seen of Britain, and again, there's cognitive and social biases, which is something that we talked about in this whole series about the dimensions, because a physicist came out to talk about how that also seeps into science. You just look at the country and look at the history. Yes, King Charles is technically king of still 1.7 billion people on the planet right now. And yes, the British colonization, they did their big one, you know what I mean? But oh, how the mighty have fallen. But you wouldn't know that if you didn't actually live an average life, not visit to go on holiday. Because of course, if you visit, there's lots of cool things to see, a lot of fun places to be and all that stuff. Don't get me wrong. But if you look at the actual average living, but again, it says the powers of the people. If people here stood up more, then these things wouldn't go down the same. And the reason why standards are different in the United States is even though maybe the gap might be more extreme is what I would say. So I would say that you have way more actually rich people and way more actually poor, like this, not even maybe the numbers, but so much as the extremes are just far stronger. So being homeless, I feel like in the United States is way worse than being homeless, say here, for example. And being rich in the United States is way more rich than being rich here, for example. Right? And I've talked about these things before. Here, it's just that there's this accepted level of living where, again, people say, you got healthcare, you got whatever. But you guys don't know a lot of things about this healthcare system that I do. And why am I saying all of this and why does all of this matter? It goes back to my point that I truly believe that God intentionally gave us all the power and that we and how we wield our power essentially is what creates the world as it is and affects all the universes, including a multiverse if there is one. So that's why I said all of that just to say just now, the powers of the people, the power is always with the people, right? So I started to think about this morning when I woke up, I literally sat in bed for 2 hours in silence. I sit in silence thinking for a lot of time. You guys know that. That's why I always be thinking things that other people don't think, because I just don't think people spend that much time alone and in quiet and thinking. But I sat there for 2 hours this morning thinking, thank God it's the weekend. Also, it's the Sabbath. Shout out. Happy Sabbath, everyone. I was thinking about this concept of the multiverse and I was just thinking about everything that I've seen. And I've said to you guys before, does life imitate art or does art imitate life? And obviously art imitates life. Hence why people always end up, like say with One Piece, we've been talking a lot about how One Piece seems to have so many biblical references. It has other references to other cultural, historical events. It's actually insane how many there are. Oda's a freaking genius. I have to give it to the guy. He is a genius, and I want to learn Japanese just so I can have a conversation with this man one day, right? But also, on a deeper level, with all of this, I feel that everything in the world, just like how science is also imitating God in a sense of like we are trying to, science is a study of God. If science was to really call itself the truth, science would be the study of, it would be called the study of God, right? Because you're trying to figure out something that you don't understand, but that we still experience it. Just because science can't explain everything doesn't mean everything isn't still happening. Does that make sense? So that kind of brought me to the concept of the multiverse and this whole situation with Miguel O'Hara on the Spider-Verse movies. Now, just follow with me, okay? Because this goes into where this all factors into the battle that we're actually facing and our opponent and who this opponent is and what this opponent is trying to do, right? This losing team opponent. Sorry about the lighting. The sun is obviously moving. It's after midday. The sun's going to set over there in the west. So it's going to be moving like this till it's past my window. Anyway, so I would say my window face is probably just about 1 o'clock from the sun. So during the day, if I'm filming in the day like this, you will see this happening. Anyways, so Miguel O'Hara. As I was filming the previous video for chapter 13, the last video of chapter 13 of this book, it occurred to me that I understood something on a deeper level. And I made a video about Miguel O'Hara, Sakazuki Akainu from One Piece, and the Devil. And I do see them all as a similar type of character. Again, going back to, does life imitate art or does art imitate life? And what I understand is Miguel O'Hara, right? He's in a situation where he's got all these Spider-Men and women, right? And they've all, in their own individual multiverses or whatever verses of whatever, they all have their own journey. And there's certain canonical events, the most important one, of course, being bitten by a radioactive spider, right? Which is funny because he has never been bitten by a radioactive spider. In fact, he's injecting himself with this whatever thing that he's injecting himself with to give him these spidey powers, which again reminds me of the devil and how God does his things in his own way. And he gives us power, and we, because he gave us power, control everything. Going back to what I was saying about the difference between the United States and America, there's just things I notice about the two places where I'm like, I can tell the difference of the people because of the way that things happen when it comes to things like power and how things happen. Here, the people are just very, very good at being obedient and just going along with whatever happens. That's why whoever is the loudest is going to win. Whoever's the most aggressive over here is going to be the one to take over. In the United States, it's not quite the same, I would say. I would say people, even whether they're winner or loser, you'll see more people standing up for something and having even just a sense of patriotism. I've said that before. I wish British people were more patriotic. They're not very patriotic at all. You don't see the British flag. In fact, I haven't seen it. I don't know when the last time I saw a British flag anywhere actually was, other than maybe the Mini Cooper, like the car, because it kind of has the flags kind of designs like in a lot of the cars of the Mini Cooper. But like, when did I last see a British flag? When did I last see anything of other than like when it's football, whatever, and it's like the World Cup? People here are not patriotic at all. And again, that's why they are opening the door to themselves. Because again, the powers of the people, that's why they open the door to just be whatever they are at whatever time. I look at the government and I think this isn't even a British government, but we won't even talk about this at this point. This is not the point of the video, but Miguel O'Hara, right? So I was thinking about Miguel O'Hara, and I was thinking that like he first of all didn't have his canonical event, which is being bitten by a radioactive spider. So that's the first thing, right? But then he wants to stop. He wants to get in the way of Miles Morales because he believes Miles Morales is going to stop Miles from killing his father. He wants to stop Miles from protecting his father from dying because it's a canonical event, supposedly, according to Miguel O'Hara. And this goes back to what my point is about the world, is there are people that are steering narratives that we're all going along with, but who put you in the place to steer that narrative? Who puts the education system in the place to tell you that myths and fables are myths and fables? I've told you guys before, when I was at school and I was being told, if you want to get, and bearing in mind I'm a teacher, a very successful one, by the way, because my kids, they excel, and I teach maths and science, particularly maths and chemistry, mostly, and then maths and chemistry and physics. I rarely have to even teach biology, right? So, when I was at school, right, I remember the teachers would say, you need to impress the examiner, And I was like, who the hell is the examiner? This is the same question I'm asking about Miguel O'Hara. Like, who the hell is Miguel to be commenting right now? Because you're not even bitten by the radioactive spider. But you want to be talking about canon events, and you didn't even have the initial canon event that all the other Spider-Men actually had, and women. You didn't even have that initial thing, which is to be bitten by the radioactive spider. Am I right or am I right or am I right? Exactly. So I just got to be like, who is this examiner? What are their credentials? Why do I care what they have to say? And that's not me being into, that wasn't, and this is why I work really well. I'm great with kids, the kids that are like badly behaved. I'm really good at getting them to excel, like really good, because I understand where they're coming from, because they are a lot of time asking valid, logical questions. I'm like, who is this examiner to decide if I'm intelligent or not? Especially when on a random day that you've all chosen in an exam that's been made by I don't know who, right? My whole understanding of my own levels of intelligence, my own choices and my own journey, it's the ice cream man, and whatever, is all based off of this exam by people I don't know. The examiner who's going to look at it, who I also don't know. I don't even know what gives them the right to make these decisions. But apparently you're telling me the trajectory of my life is going to be based on what this person has to say. It's the control element. Because who has the right? I will never forget, I can't remember which famously rich person it was who got a letter back from the school from their child, because basically it was a mother, and her son had been given a letter by the school. They'd sent to the parents to say, your kid, he's just not smart, he's just a problem, blah, 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 blah. We can't actually help him anymore. So the school gave up. She never saw that letter. She never told him what the letter said. She just said to him, I wish I could remember who it was, because he's one of these famously rich people now. She just said, oh, the school said you're just too brilliant for them to handle, which even if she didn't, whether she believed it or she didn't, I believe she did. She stuck with that, and before you know it, he became massively rich and famous. And the only time he discovered that letter ever existed was quite simply purely only the fact that he had seen that letter after his mom died, and he was going through her stuff, like organizing all of her stuff, which goes back to what I'm saying again about the power being with the people. That as a teacher, I know that there's a lot of power I have in a child's life by what I say about them and what I'm doing. You know what I'm saying? And how they perceive that and what they believe. And that's what I believe was the situation that went down between Miles Morales and Miguel O'Hara, because Miles being who he was, his character spoke for itself. And then so by the end, he's actually so other people want to take his side anyway when they're seeing what's happening. And he's calling things out for what they are. Miguel O'Hara had people in a chokehold because he had convinced them that he was the one to trust in. He was the one who'd studied all these universes and all this other stuff. And he's the one who created, I don't know if he created or he found or whatever. I'm assuming some like level of creation. These devices that could switch between universes, and that he was giving out and choosing who did and who didn't have it, which goes back to my question of who makes you the one to decide, especially when at the very least you're not even somebody that was initially bitten by a radioactive spider. So what I'm proposing in all of this is I'm proposing that this is exactly what the devil is doing. The devil is trying to take our power that God gave us, utilize us by convincing us, because I always say this, whoever controls what you think controls what you do. Just like how when they wanted to get Brexit through the thing, the British government is ingenious, right? Because what they do is they often let people in the UK get upset about stuff, so that when they make their changes, they have to say, they can be like, oh, but we just did what the people wanted. They get to wash their hands off of it. That's what the one thing about the UK that I've noticed. They get to wash their hands off of it. So that's what they did with Brexit. They had all these buses going around saying 400 million is going to the NHS. I don't remember the actual numbers. The NHS being the National Health Services, our free healthcare, which is actually the biggest employer in the world of staff, right? And I have so much information about the NHS I could share and how badly they spend that money, by the way. The taxes are not going to the best place they could be going with the taxes. But again, the British public is not patriotic and they don't have balls. So they're just going to take whatever they get and just move on. But they did that bus. Like they said all these things, all the Europeans that are coming in and taking the jobs, blah, 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 to get the Brexit thing through. It was, they needed to control what people thought so they could control what people would do. Right, similar to how people like Beyonce were getting paid, what was it, 30 or 10 million to endorse Kamala Harris. They were even asking influencers to do the same, to influence different things. Because why? Because whoever controls what you think controls what you do. And this is exactly what we see with Miguel O'Hara. This is exactly how I see the devil. The devil does everything. That's why I say that the sports, entertainment, and media industry is the front line. It's the front line of all of the kingdom of darkness, because it's people that are telling you, it's either entertainment where you watch things and you either love the person, you idolize them, so you want to follow whatever they say. You watch something you think is just entertainment, so all your walls are down and you're taking in stuff that's going to affect how you think in your life. Like I always use this example, right? if you see the most delicious, even if you weren't in the mood to have a burger that day, if you go and see on in TV advert, this is how advertising works, right? They try to make the advert look amazing. The burger looks like the best burger you ever did have. And then there's always like a deal that's only happening for the next 2 weeks. Now, even though you weren't even in the mood, now you're in the mood, right? For having a burger. That's what they do. This lighting thing is really going to bother me, but I'll change it after. Okay, actually, hold on. Now you actually want to have a burger because now you've been convinced. You know what I'm saying? It's the same thing with Kingdom of Darkness. And that's what I'm saying. Like, Miguel O'Hara, to me, like, he represents everything that I think is wrong with the devil. Well, it's everything really, but with the world as well, where there's just this person that people all of a sudden trust everything into, whether they recognize that they're trusting that person or not. They haven't questioned if that person deserves to be there. They haven't questioned if that person has their best interest at heart. They haven't also questioned the hypocrisies of it all. Like I was saying, on the one hand, Miguel was saying, but we have to not tell Miles, because if you tell him, he's going to stop his canon event, and we need to let the canon events happen. He also hasn't proven that in any way that he knows that for sure that the so-called canon event not happening is necessary, right? Because he hasn't got proof. Also, how does he know, since Miles's life has happened naturally as all the other Spider-Men and women lives have happened, how does he not know that it's actually canonical that at this point of history, what Miles Morales was going to do is actually another canon event that's going to help other canon events that maybe weren't supposed to happen, that maybe were affected because of him, because he's Miguel O'Hara, and he hopped into the universes and he started to control things, and he was the one who didn't even have the canon event himself, which reminds me of the devil, how the devil will come into our lives and be the answer for everything and take over science, entertainment, sports, media, technology, everything, family, everywhere. Go to work and let us tell your kids what they need to do and what they need to be. Every single area, right? But then at the end of the day, we're the ones that God gave dominion. When God created Adam and Eve, and he said he breathed life into the nostrils of man. He said, he says, have dominion, be fruitful and multiply. Right? He gave that to us, not to the devil, but the devil's coming in with his minions, trying to tell us what to think and what to be and what to understand. They're dictating what is a myth and what is a fable, what is the truth, what gives you the credentials to be doing that. Because from where I'm standing, you're the one who made the dumbest mistake of anybody could possibly make of being close to God and then choosing against him for yourself because you wanted to be a God, and you're continuing that quest to try and be a God. You're not the real deal. You weren't the canon event. My life and your life and anybody else here is watching, your life is a canon event because it happened. It didn't happen by you trying. You didn't ask to be born, but you're here now. And that's obviously, to me, that couldn't get more canon than that, because that's God's will. He's like, well, these are my children. Every single child is one he loves. Every single one of us, we're loved. So, of course, again, what would the enemy do if you were smart to go against that because you want to maintain power? Is convince everybody that God isn't real. So then you think that you have to put the same trust that you're supposed to put in God is, so you're going to now go and put in a Miguel O'Hara or a devil or a government or an institution. Are you guys understanding what I'm saying? Because I'm actually spitting facts at this point. Do you guys see what I'm saying? So this is what I've been thinking about this whole thing. And like, it's actually so facts. Because when you start to delve into it and you start to look into things, you start to realize, and this is what I've been talking about, why I've been talking about One Piece, you start to realize that so much of the stuff we've been told and we're being told, at the end of the day, they're not like absolute truths. They're like favorable truths. You know, like how there's a phrase that winners are the ones who write history. It's the winners who write history, right? Same thing. Going back to so many of these things that don't make sense. Why are there these ancient kingdoms that existed that seem to have had greater technology than where we're at now and seem to have been far ahead? Why is it that, again, if we're so intelligent and we're the most intelligent of all, we still can't make up for that technology? And also we're more destructive, dysfunctional, degenerate than we've ever been. Diseased, broken-hearted. You know what I'm saying? And we're still going through all these things as a society. How is that possible? But then we're putting our trust in one area, right? I'm just saying, it's giving Miguel O'Hara. And it's like, what were the real canon events as well? Let's really talk about that for a second. And it's funny that Christians get upset when you talk about any book that isn't the Bible, because like, that's not canon, whatever. Which is quite funny, isn't it? That's what I'm saying. So if we're suggesting, I'm going to talk about that separately. Will I? I will talk about it separately. I'm going to talk in the next video. I'm going to talk about why, going back to the book, now that I've set the tone, I'm going to talk about why I feel that there is forces trying to control the higher dimensions. And it goes back to this power complex, this God complex, this Miguel O'Hara vibes. We'll come back to that though in the next video, because if life's a game, it's pay to win. God bless you all. God loves you. I love you. And I'll see you in my next one.